Jenny Ryan's silence. Why the vixen going quiet said more than words could. For a woman whose entire career is built on speaking faster and smarter than everyone else in the room, silence was never supposed to be part of the story. But that's exactly what happened. The Chase's Jenny Ryan, known to millions simply as the vixen, went quiet. Not by choice, not for drama, but because her body demanded it. And when she finally broke that silence, what she shared turned out to be far more moving than anyone expected. Here's what actually happened. Jenny revealed she'd undergone surgery to remove her thyroid gland, joking with typical dry wit that it had made a bid for fame by growing so large it started causing real problems. She posted photos from her hospital recovery, including a visible scar across the front of her neck, and asked her followers not to worry. The operation had gone well, and her consultant was pleased with how things had healed. Now, if you know anything about thyroid surgery, you'll understand exactly why this mattered so much for someone like Jenny. The thyroid sits right at the front of the throat, wrapped around the very structures that control the voice. For most people, losing that gland means weeks of forced vocal rest, careful movement, and genuine uncertainty about how their voice will sound afterward. For a professional quizzer, someone whose entire on-screen identity depends on rapid-fire verbal sparring, that uncertainty carries an entirely different weight. Imagine being told the very tool that built your career might be affected, and then having to simply wait and see. And that's where the emotional core of this story really lives. It's not just a health update. It's the quiet, very human fear of losing the thing that makes you, you, followed by the immense relief of getting it back. What struck so many viewers wasn't the surgery itself, but the tone Jenny chose to share it in. There was no self-pity in her words, no attempt to dramatize her own suffering for sympathy. Instead, she leaned into humor almost immediately, joking about having to stay still for weeks in case her head fell off, a line that somehow managed to be both wildly funny and quietly reassuring all at once. It's hard to overstate how disarming that kind of honesty is. In an industry that often rewards either total silence about illness or performative vulnerability, Jenny found a third way. Transparent, funny, and completely unbothered by the idea that people might see her at her most physically compromised. She also made a point of thanking the surgical team who cared for her, describing the NHS in glowing terms that clearly weren't for show. There's something worth sitting with in that gesture. A woman known nationally for her sharp tongue and competitive edge chose, in her most vulnerable moment, to redirect the spotlight toward the people who healed her rather than keep it on herself. Online, the reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly warm. Fellow patients who'd gone through similar procedures flooded her comments with their own stories, thanking her for speaking openly about something so many people quietly go through without ever discussing publicly. That's often what these moments do best. They don't just generate sympathy for one person, they crack open a wider conversation that had been sitting beneath the surface all along. Suddenly, thousands of people who'd had their own thyroid removed, their own scars, their own weeks of enforced silence, felt a little less alone. There's also something quietly poignant in the timing of it all. Jenny's path to becoming a chaser wasn't handed to her. It took a grueling 6-month audition process and years on the competitive quiz circuit before she ever sat in that famous chair. Voice, precision, and quick thinking are the very tools she spent a lifetime sharpening. To have those tools threatened, even temporarily, by something as ordinary and unglamorous as a swollen thyroid gland is the kind of twist that reminds you just how human even the sharpest television personalities really are. Some viewers have wondered aloud whether this experience might shift how Jenny talks about health and vulnerability going forward, whether the woman known for intimidating contestants might now become an unlikely, candid voice for something entirely different, living with and recovering from a condition millions quietly manage. Nothing's been confirmed either way, but it's hard not to notice how naturally she's stepped into that role already, simply by choosing honesty over silence. Maybe what lingers longest isn't the scar, or even the diagnosis. Maybe it's the reminder that even the people we watch effortlessly demolish contestants week after week are dealing with their own quiet battles just out of frame. What did you think when you saw her update? Relief, admiration, or something else entirely? And has a moment like this ever changed the way you saw someone you thought you already knew?